Let me take you to a fifth principle. We've said that conception is the act of God, creation is in the image of God, care is the concern of God, and compassion should be required by the people of God. Let me take you to a fifth one, and this is perhaps the most startling. Condemnation of murderers is the will of God. Condemnation of murderers is the will of God. We already read in Exodus chapter 21 that if a person strikes a woman so that the baby comes out and dies, it is life for life. We shouldn't be surprised by that, since we know that's a viable life and a person created by God, but in our day we might be, because we have been told it isn't. And in Exodus 20:13, God said, "Thou shalt not murder." And I read you Genesis 9:6, which says, "Whoso sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed, for in the image of God made he man." In other words, clearly the Scripture indicates that if you take a life, you're going to lose your life. Some people say, well, that's Old Testament teaching. Certainly Jesus changed all that. No, he didn't. Jesus was the leading New Testament advocate of capital punishment. In Matthew chapter 26 and verse 51, it says, "And behold, one of those who were with Jesus," that's Peter, we remember, "reached and drew out his sword and struck the slave of the high priest and cut off his ear." And you know he was trying to cut off his head, not his ear. And the guy ducked and just lost his ear. And then Jesus said to him, to Peter, "Put your sword back into its place, for all those who take up the sword shall perish by the sword." He is not giving him a prophecy. He is reiterating a divine law. If you take a life, you give a life. Jesus was articulating the law of God. You take up a sword and take that man's life, and you will give your life. In Acts chapter 25 and verse 11, Paul said in verse 10, "I'm standing before Caesar's tribunal, where I ought to be tried. I have done no wrong to the Jews, as you very well know. If then I am a wrongdoer and have committed anything worthy of death, I do not refuse to die." Paul knew capital punishment was God's way. He said, if I've done something worthy of death, then I do not refuse to die. And there you have the Apostle Paul reiterating his own belief that God had established the law of capital punishment. In Romans chapter 13 and verse 4, he said that the police, the soldiers, whoever in the government bear arms to protect the innocent and punish the evil, he says, do not bear the sword for nothing. They are ministers of God, and they are avengers who bring wrath. They are armed in order to take life. They don't have swords to spank you with. They have swords to take your life. Clearly, the Scripture in the Old Testament designed a capital punishment penalty for those who took life, and even the life of an unborn child fell under that. Jesus reiterated capital punishment as suitable for certain crimes, and so did the Apostle Paul. In Proverbs 6:16, let me give you further insight into God's attitude toward those who take life. There are 6 things the Lord hates. Yes, 7 which are an abomination to him. Haughty eyes, a lying tongue, and hands that shed innocent blood. God hates people who shed innocent blood. Is there anything more innocent than an infant? Is there anything more innocent than a protected infant hidden safely in the womb of its own mother? In Proverbs 24:11, deliver those who are being taken away to death, and those who are staggering to slaughter, oh, hold them back. If you say, see, we did not know this. Does he not consider it who weighs the hearts? Does he not know it who keeps your soul? And will he not render to every man according to his work? If you're allowing people who are innocent to be killed, don't say, well, I didn't know what was going on. God knows your heart. He knows whether you know. And if you're guilty, he'll render you according to his work. There are many other scriptures that speak about God's attitude. In Deuteronomy chapter 27, verse 25 is worthy of a moment. Cursed is he who accepts a bribe to strike down an innocent person. God says, if you are paid to kill someone, curse you. And there are some other specifics. Leviticus chapter 18, 2 Kings chapter 24, Amos chapter 1. I want to take it a step further. God forbids any taking of innocent life. That we understand. But I want to take it a step further and say this, that where you have blood shed, you have a very interesting result take place. Look at Psalm 106. Psalm 106. And I'm going to show you several passages as we wrap this up. Psalm 106, verse 38. Here is an indictment against sinful people who, verse 37, sacrificed their sons and their daughters to the demons and shed innocent blood. They actually killed their own children to make them sacrifices to false gods. They shed innocent blood, the blood of their sons and their daughters, whom they sacrificed to the idols of Canaan. Now notice this line, you might want to underline it. And the land was polluted with the blood. The land was polluted with the blood. It left itself, as it were, in the soil. It stained the land. Now go back to Genesis chapter 4. Genesis chapter 4. And verse 10. God had said to Cain, where's your brother Abel? He said, I don't know. He did know. He'd killed him. Verse 10, and God said to him, what have you done? Then listen to this. The voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground. And now you are cursed from the ground which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. Now follow the thought. God says you shed innocent blood, and that blood pollutes the land. It's as if that blood is everywhere staining the land. The blood of 2 million aborted babies in our land and somewhere between 60 and 75 million across the earth every year stains the soil. And then in Genesis 4, God says that blood cries out. He personifies that blood as if it's alive. And what is it crying for? It is unrequited. It is crying for retaliation. It is crying for justice. It is crying for the execution of its murderer. Genesis 42:22. And Reuben answered them, saying, did I not tell you, do not sin against the boy? And you would not listen. Now comes the reckoning for his blood. And he was talking about how they had treated Joseph. There will be a reckoning for the blood that cries out to God because it has been shed innocently. Several times Scripture says, and the blood of a certain person shall be on your head. Remember that? In other words, you're responsible. And so God requires the death penalty when blood shed from innocent life cries out to Him. And I believe that's the plight of America. I believe that the land is stained and soiled with the blood of the innocents who have been and are continuing to be, even now as I speak, massacred. Nothing shows more clearly the total moral and spiritual decadence of our society. Its disregard for God. Its disregard for His creative work, for that which is made in His image. Its disregard for His compassion and the compassion of Christ. Nothing shows this more than the mass murder of millions of babies. This disdain for the sanctity of human life and the substitution of what we call the quality of life, which causes us to be murderers of children, causes the very soil of our land to cry out to God for retribution. And I believe we are now under the judgment of God, a nation of murderers.